Guitar Sessions, episode 96. We're going to talk today about the drop D tuning. What is it, and how do we put it into our playing? And hopefully the videos you saw showcases some of the history dating back to the 1500s. It is not a new tuning. Lots of classic rock things that made use of this tuning, and we're gonna make use of it ourselves and see what we can do with it and combine styles and learn different things with it. So anyway, with that said, what is drop D tuning? So with that said, I'm gonna go. This is standard E tuning. Standard tuning. All right. Drop D tuning is taking that low E string and moving it down a whole step till it is an octave lower than the fourth string open, which is a D note. Drop D tuning. So things we can do. First thing we can do is we can check out, thinking a little bit of historic, trying to put some history into each of these lessons. Maybe the first people in my lifetime to make use of drop D tuning was to my awareness was John Lennon when he wrote Dear Prudence. Chord progression is something that is a common chord progression. It's kind of like The Needle and the Damage Done. It's kind of like Can't Find My Way Home by Blind Faith. 1968, The White Album, The Beatles, John Lennon, Dear Prudence. Now, another thing that makes drop D a fun thing for beginners in power chording and in rock music is the fact that just by going like this, open strings, that's a power chord. And then to play other power chords, all we got to do is put a finger down, and for me, it's the middle finger. So the power chord is played on the form 1 power chord. That's the only chord that is altered due to the tuning. Trying to get my drum machine up. All right. Jimmy Page. Okay. So it's got classic rock things. It's like Fat Bottom Girls by Queen. Anyway, with that said, lots and lots of songs that are classic, but also in my adult life, when drop D became a real big thing, was I first learned it in classical guitar when I was studying with Scott Anderson at York College. That should be known, okay? Even though John Lennon and Neil Young and all these guys played with it, and folk artists, lots of folk artists used the tuning, But in the rock realm, there's a guy in Seattle, Washington, who was in an underground band, super, super influential. And at first he was so groundbreaking, nobody really liked him. Like when they first came out, they were so different and so off the beaten path that they sounded weird to 1980s sensibilities of the Sunset Strip and to Frankie Goes to Hollywood and to even punk rock didn't even sound like what these guys were doing. Okay, the band was called Melvins. The guitar player and the visionary was called Buzz Osborne. Buzz Osborne is probably the most influential grunge musician who ever lived. More influential than Kurt Cobain, because without Buzz Osborne, there would be no Kurt Cobain. There would be no Kim Thayil. Okay? Buzz was doing it before everybody. As soon as Buzz discovered that you don't have to play speed metal, he went through the speed metal, a couple of speed metal months, and he grew up in classic rock and Kiss and all that kind of stuff, and then he discovered punk rock, and then he discovered speed metal, and then what he did was kind of more in tune with Black Sabbath and like their some of their stuff, which he slowed everything down to a dirge, and that ended up being the sound of a generation of people who came out of Seattle. So it was a grunge thing. This was a grunge tuning that was really common, really popular. It's in Soundgarden, it's in Alice in Chains, and it's in Nirvana. Okay, Kurt Cobain was a roadie and a driver for the Melvins. He said probably the Melvins are the ones that inspired him to start his own band. Buzz was a little older than Kurt, 3 years older. He had more experience. He was the cool guy in town. And Kurt says, I've been to over 100 Melvins rehearsals. He went on the road with the Melvins before he had his own band. Okay, so anyway, in the spirit of that, what we want to do is we want to put this sound of the guitar into our playing. And so one of the first things we can do is understand that we can have chord progressions, we can have riffs, we can have arpeggios, or it almost sounds like maybe a little Led Zeppelin, maybe a little Lindsey Buckingham. Okay, it doesn't have to be any one style of music that you use drop D in. Okay, so the first thing we can do probably to get the sound in our ear is, okay, on your low D string, let's figure out what the notes of your D minor pentatonic are, because that's where lots of roots come from. That's going to be D, F, G, A, C, and D. The drop D sound. So lots of you hear the Soundgardens, you hear Slaves and Bulldozers, you hear Spoonman, you hear Outshined, you hear their version of Come Together. It's probably my version of Come Together, to be honest with you. So anyway, so you can come up with riffs. Figuring out power chord ideas and always lean into those open strings. Okay, so like leaning into those open strings. The open string is an important, vital part of any riff. When we have so I have a drum beat here. You can do lots of things that you've already learned in E minor and just move them down a whole step. So like, just move it down into whole steps. All right, another thing we can talk about, so that those are power chords off of that. Coming up, as I said, using broken chords, like System of a Down, kind of. That kind of thing. We can break the chord up. All right. Another thing you can check out, what a blues guitar player might do, is or a blues rock guitar player, let's say. Let's start with that. Is he finds out where the notes, where his box patterns are. So that pattern that I'm playing there, put that into your playing and throw that into your... That's a riff. That's what songs are built off of, and this kind of stuff. All right, so with that said, guys like Tony Iommi, what he did, it's a little bit different. Not much, because he's coming from a blues background. Is he tuned down a half step and is in drop D. In his... Players call that chugging. It's like... Okay, chugging is like that. It's almost like a percussive, palm muted, lot of chromaticism. Okay. Experiment with different kind of grooves. Dun, da, 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 dun, da. I'm thinking of Children of the Grave. Dun, ba, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 da. Combining the idea of chromaticism. Whenever I talk about chromaticism, what it is half-step movement. So that's a lot of dirge rock, a lot of like kind of stoner rock, a lot of the Melvins influence. Blues guys, things we can do with the blues. One of the things I would kind of want to do with the blues, it's called like a vamp blues and like a let's see. Like a Delta blues kind of drone, like Delta. It's like hill country blues. This is the drone. Different than the pedaled drone note when metal musicians pedal, which we'll talk about. So I'm mapping out minor pentatonic, major pentatonic. Anyway, so that's kind of a drone approach. Now, one of the things we can do with a drone approach is also if you know anything about Travis picking and starting to employ that. It's kind of like Black Keys kind of thing. Hill country blues. That's a lot of their influences, and it's like we're talking about Mississippi, and we're talking about a completely different style. Really, really cool style of blues. Pedaled riffs. What is a pedaled riff? It's coming back to that open string.